and I'm pretty exhausted today. So, oh, cool. EJ is joining us too.
Hey.
Oh, look at that. A cool book on companion planting that Noah has.
Very complimentary to Mike Hoag's famous book called Beauty and Abundance. But you have to find it in look for it hard. It's called Companion Planting, Successful Gardening the Organic Way by a German woman, Gertrude Frank, Franck. It's like high-level vegan gardening without external inputs.
Really?
And Jeff Lawton described it as cover crop gardening with a small scissor. It's a very awesome book.
Hold it up again, please.
I can type it in the chat if you want.
You are a gem.
But since we are recording this and everything, you could hold it up again. Everybody could see the cover. There we go. Now it's for everybody. Companion planting by
Gertrude Frank.
And recommended by Noah Madlin and by Jeff Lawton, apparently. So that's fantastic.
Yes,
and it's only a little over 100 pages, but it's a phenomenal book.
As opposed to this one. This one is not 100 pages.
Yeah, it has a few extra topics in it other than just companion planting, though.
maybe a couple.
Yeah. Well, here, it's a good time for me to say thank you all for joining and welcome to the First Church of Permaculture, where today we'll be finishing up our month of kind of devotion, if we can call that, to water, something that we all should consider sacred, because when we don't, as I was saying, if we don't, things can sometimes get a little bit stormy. Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather, since my gal and I ain't together. Keeps raining all the time. Life ain't fair, gloom and misery everywhere, stormy weather. I just can't keep my poor self together. I'm weary all the time. When she went away, the blues walked in and met me. And if she stays away, old rocking chair's gonna get me. The Lord will let me walk in the sun once more. Once more. Can't go on. Everything I had is gone. Stormy weather. I just can't keep my poor self together. I'm weary all the time. It's raining all the time. Keeps raining all the time.
And I wish it would rain. I wish it would rain. When will it rain?
Oh, no. Maybe Noah can send us some of his.
Well, maybe you summoned it now.
I hope so.
I hope so. Although now they say we're going to have some hail tomorrow.
Oh, wow. I hadn't heard that here. So
You're
hopefully
lucky.
we won't. Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully we won't either.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and Noah said hi to EJ. Glad you could join, buddy.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to hear the song at the end. That's why I always come anyway. So perfect. Yeah, and it's water too. That's great. So yeah, I haven't been able to kind of tune in. I was hoping just to listen here, and glad I caught you, and hoping to catch you another one.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe I'm trying to make these interactive and feature different people in our little community. So it would be great if sometime you want to tell us what you're up to up where you're at. Maybe we can have a little discussion on one of these.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Thank you for that. Good idea.
Yeah, I'd like it.
Having Jenny and Laura and everyone else too. That's what I love, is to see all our favorite characters. So
they've actually joined for some of these, so it looks like they didn't today. Yeah, we'll have to make sure we do some where we get the whole band together here and get our
cool.
Oh well, does anyone have any water related topics to bring into our discussion here today?
Well, I kind of do.
Sure.
So yesterday I made a little garden bed at the place I want it. And I'm real sure that's where I want it. So, but what I'm not sure is I'm doing like a keyhole garden. My land is so slopey, not bad slopey, but slopey, all over the place. And so I have two sides so what do I do?
Oh, you kind of have water coming into the bed from two different sides, you think?
It could, yeah, because one is coming from the house. So everything that falls on the house, some of it will drip over, and anything that falls up against the house will just start to roll down that little slope there. But on the other side, it's like they're on an angle, so there's the corner and it'll come from both sides. Yeah, it could happen.
That sounds like it's a great opportunity for us for me to open up and show a picture of something exactly like this.
Hello, Pamela.
Hi, Pamela. Glad you could join us. Yeah, so when we're talking about, it might look familiar to Alicia. Is it okay if I use this? All right. This is a little place she might know a few things about. So it sounds like, when we're looking at, this is a little bit of a contour map that we made for people who are just joining us. We had a water workshop over the last month where some of us went even deeper into our discussions of permaculture design for water and landscapes. And so this was a map that we made, and we were starting to talk. I wanted to talk just a little bit more about opportunities for water. And really, when we're looking for some really prime opportunities, we're looking for something just like this. We've got, this line right here. This shows me. So these are all pretty tight together. Then down here, they loosen up some further down the slope. And this diagram, the slope goes this way. So the water that falls on it is going to be running down the hill in that direction. That's a giant blue arrow there, people. And we're really looking for something like this formation right here. And this it sounds a bit like what Sandy was describing. And just to make this a little more clear, we're going to say the house is probably, the house isn't on this map, but someplace probably about right there, right, Alicia? Give or take, close enough for this discussion. So with the shape of those lines there, we have a really interesting opportunity, because we always want to think, when we're looking for where the water runs, the water always runs perpendicular to these lines. You know, a drop of water that falls on this map is going to run perpendicular to these lines. So when we have an area like this, we have water running in that direction, water running in that direction, water running in that direction, right? So all this water is running and landing right about here in the same spot. And so is this about what we're talking about, Sandy? It's like there's water coming into the bed from two different directions. You also care about water from the house. And this is, the only thing I can say about it is design the bed so that if you want that water in it, you're taking advantage of the opportunity of all that water. Maybe we still build it up as kind of a raised bed so it has good drainage too, so you're not trying to grow your food in a swamp. Is that spot could very easily be, it could be two things. It could be an amazing.
It's not, because it continues sloping away. So the water just will run across it and then continue on its merry way. I don't see it getting swampy there.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing about this. This could just be this overhead map here, but if I squint a little bit and use my imagination, I can even kind of see right here, like, I need the pen, not the eraser. Right here on this map, on this aerial map from a satellite, there's a darker green spot, and around it, it looks lighter colors. I bet if I were Alicia and I went out there and found where the spot was, it would always be kind of a little wet and ready to grow. So the only question then is, this is a natural opportunity for us. Could be an opportunity to site a pond really super easily, or it could be an opportunity to site a garden like Sandy was talking about. This is going to be a naturally really rich spot. Hey, Dennis, how's it going? Man, you look comfy there. You got your shades on.
Yeah, man, hanging out at the pool, doing things.
Oh, I wish I had a pool.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, well, you're living large, permaculture life like I live.
Living large.
Yeah, well, so that's what we can also have right there, an opportunity for a pool.
My natural pool.
That's right. Dennis, I just sang one. The opportunity's always open, for you to throw in a little song.
So
He's
it's
thinking.
funny you guys are saying this, because the people who lived in the house before us actually built a greenhouse type structure right there, and they had to create channels around it to manage the water. So there's like a little bridge to get into the greenhouse. And I keep looking at it, and I really don't want to take this thing apart and move it, but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen in the next year, because it is just not the right spot for it.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? This is why this kind of permaculture design, just doing this little bit of a process beforehand, can be so important, because this could be an opportunity, or it could be a problem if we're using it for a place like that greenhouse. If you didn't want to move the greenhouse, you could look at those water channels, right? And because they moved this water someplace else. Well, I had to move someplace. It's probably just moving now down here someplace and collecting. So you have another opportunity in a different spot. So did that answer your question, Sandy?
Yeah, I guess I'll just try to harvest it all and see what happens. Can always keep channel it away if I need to.
That's what I would think. We're not in such a wet climate that once you've got soil built up really good, you got good quality soil, it's probably not going to be too much of a problem. So it would be a problem I'd try to solve by improving the soil and the drainage and building it up and making nice fluffy soil, instead of trying to just drain the water away to someplace else. All right. Hey, Melody's joining us. Hey, Dennis, just wanted to point out EJ's on here too. I don't think you guys have been on the same call for a while.
Oh, is EJ out there?
Yep.
Hey, man, how have you been? Are you still up in cold Canada?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's actually been a little bit of a heat wave here, and yeah, I've been pretty good, man. It's good to hear from you and see that you're out enjoying the weather at the pool.
Heck yeah. I would tell you I was at a nature's club, but that would probably freak everybody out.
Yeah. So I'm be here for I don't know how long it's going to take since COVID. You know, I'm still waiting on my permanent resident card, so I still haven't even been back to the U.S. But
Cool.
the idea is that I don't know. I'm going to keep going to school here, and I've been clowning a lot, you know, on the street and on the subway and stuff. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. And
You still taking care of dogs?
you know, what's funny is that I stopped doing that because I went back to school, but I just actually have a beagle that's coming for like a week next week. So I'm pretty excited for that. But I slowed down quite a bit. It's not like doggy daycare anymore.
Ah, cool. Well, yeah, man, it's good to see you out there. Like Mike said, I haven't bumped into you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Yeah. Plus, I went over to Twitter and started doing social audio and other stuff. So I've been off Facebook as much, but starting to the world is changing, you know. Since TikTok came out, now people are throwing up about Instagram, and because everything is trying to get changed into, you know, TikTok, and they're finding out the users don't want that. And anyway, I just been in these other realms and learning, but still the same goals, just trying to, you know, if I'm going to make an ass of myself in this world, I might as well do it trying to promote food forests to kids
Yeah,
or whatever the hell else.
Very smart. Very good.
You could do a lot worse than making an ass out of yourself. That's for sure. I like that motto.
If it gets people to pay attention to permaculture, I'll do whatever it damn takes.
That's right. Hey, you know, I'm looking at something else on this map. Maybe y'all can tell me what I'm looking at here. What's going on right here? This is another thing that we can see on these kind of maps. Oh, I'll maybe give you another hint. I see another thing where I'll make these blue, where there are this shaped lines right here, right? See those again. So this looks like another wet spot or potential wet spot right here. Looks like it's right on the property line. That might not be too useful to Alicia, but. So when the lines are going the other way, like right here, you know, you got to look for your V's. You got V's and upside down V's, right? And when the V's point down the slope, like the yellow ones do, then that's going to be a ridge. It's going to be a naturally dry spot. Because again, water runs perpendicular to the lines, and so here the water's running that direction, and here the water's running that direction, right? So all the water is running away from that area, and so when I'm looking at the map, I'm looking at this going, oh, well, if I'm going to try to grow something there, I might have to try to move some of the water over there somehow, or be aware of that, or figure out something to do about that. So just so I point that out too. There's some cool things we can learn from looking at these sorts of maps.
Love these maps. Oh my gosh, I'm scheming so hard on this right now. This is amazing, and the colors too. Thanks.
Yeah, it looks like pop art. You know, I should publish these. I should try to get these into a museum.
Heck yeah. Shoot, with the right. Absolutely. Digital gallery.
Hey, Alicia, since we're looking at your spot, do you have I just one second here. I actually dig Dennis's tunes, but you know, I took down the wind chimes, Dennis. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to chat. Alicia, while we're looking at your site here, you Sam, that going through this and doing some permaculture design on it has helped you think about some things and be creative about this. Did you have anything to say about that? Well, we're looking at a spot of your site here.
Sure, I'd be happy to toss out some thoughts and then absolutely welcome feedback from all your all's eyes and perspectives. So I'm actually going to put in the chat the current state. So what you all guys are seeing is the lot before the previous stewards built on it. And so if I can add a picture, I'm going to add a picture that's like an aerial view of what it actually looks like now. Possibly not, but we'll see.
You might have to share your screen. And
yeah. Okay, that's a good idea.
Which I'll stop sharing mine.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see it's changed quite a bit. They built a house. This, can you guys see my cursor?
Yep.
Yeah. So this area down here, this is actually a septic mound. The tanks are in here, and they did a little bit of terracing in this area. You can definitely see the water, and then this is the greenhouse structure I was describing earlier. So, you know, we've lived here 4 weeks, so not a lot of time to observe yet. You know, definitely still getting the lay of things. And from what I've learned from Mike's class this month is when I'm considering implementing structures, starting with water, and how do I want to route and channel water over this incredible slope. So for me, starting at the top is what makes sense to my mind. And one of the things that I had planned to do this weekend was to just haul a sprinkler up here and get some water on this asphalt and see how it runs off. Like, where does it actually come off this asphalt? You know, because if it all dumps into this pasture next door, then that definitely gives me a different perspective than if it's coming off the side straight down towards our house and the rest of this property. But I'm nursing a back injury today, so I don't know if sprinkler and hauling hoses is going to happen. But what I was thinking is, you know, if water is coming off of this cul-de-sac, this road here, of figuring out how to do ways to collect it and get it into the soil on this first contour. And so a few thoughts of that. I love the rain garden idea. And then in this pasture next door, they have a lot of tree pieces stacked. Some of them are cut into rounds, some of them are like 6 to 8 foot lengths. And so I want to, right now they're running beef cattle on this pasture. So I want to get a hold of the farmer and ask them, like, do you have plans for this wood? What are your thoughts around it? They also have stacks of big rocks. I'm like, do you have plans for the rocks? Because I see all those raw materials and I see this slope here and I'm like, okay, I can find help for using the rocks to build terraces, using those big chunks of wood to build terraces, as well as to like places to hold water so that it can slowly drain. For those of you who weren't in the class, I live in Western Washington State, and so we get a lot of water most of the year, and then we have a drought, usually definitely July and August, sometimes as early as mid-June to mid-September. So water shortage isn't a problem, except during just 2 to 3 months of the year. So everything that I can do to collect this water and make it available in the soil for those 2 to 3 months of the year would be great.
Yeah, it sounds like, as EJ said, hello nurse. We got nurse log opportunity there next door. That's great. Yeah, those nurse log terraces do wonderful, and so that would be a really cool idea. And of course, and then I agree with that plan. Starting up at that slope, get that biggest opportunity for water, and then you got the big house right there too. I bet you. I want to see where this goes in 3 years, and just from other people that I know in your climate who've done similar things, but the opportunity, the cul-de-sac up there, and the house, and the slope. If you choose your garden spots wisely and route that water to them and get them there, I bet you could. And then you probably want like a few rain barrels for those, for the peak of the worst parts of that dry season. But then otherwise, I bet you can do it. I bet you can create a nearly, I'll say, a very low irrigation garden up there.
That's the hope. So I'll keep you all posted on how it comes together.
Cool. Hey, and I see Melanie is joined too. How you doing? Oh,
there we go. I'm good. Yeah, good. Things are moving along here. David's going to cut through behind me. He's on his way to another Zoom meeting.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we've been working on our project on the front yard this year. So the backyard, has been pretty settled since we alleviated the flooding, and we're just doing water we're talking about today, right? I have some thoughts about that because of the way we were able to change the flooding in the backyard into a pond, and some saving water and creating all kinds of habitat. The wildlife that's come into our yard since we did all that is just amazing. And we've been working on the front yard this year and just trying to, we originally only had 2 raised beds, and now we just got rid of almost all of the grass with the sheet mulching and made a different design, made an herb spiral. Feel official now that I've got an herb spiral. It's so funny because I, for whatever reason, I had some resistance to the herb spiral, because when I was getting my PDCs, it was like talked about so extensively. And I just felt like, come on, like, how great is this thing? It's like overkill. But now that I made one, I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like, it's not the part of my garden I use the most, but man, it's not like I'm harvesting big bunches of tomatoes out of it or anything.
Yeah.
But like, I use it 3 times a week, every single week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we, part of the intention around it, because we went back and forth about, a lot of this stuff says like by your kitchen door, the closest to the house and all that. And it's like, I get that. I've had a kitchen garden before like that. We have a lot of shade by our kitchen back door. And we are really trying to impact our community and the public. And so putting it in the front yard at the corner of our lot, it gets the most sun it possibly could. And it is already giving back in terms of that intention about people. Like just yesterday, I was outside doing some things. Guy across the street who's like literally lived there for 7 years. We've talked like twice. He walked over. He's like, what is that? I've been watching you. And we got into this great conversation about, what we're doing and transforming yards and really engaging people with getting rid of lawns. So it's been great. And that's kind of what we've been up to. We've been busy. I have a non-water question, but I could post it in the group if you'd prefer. And
no, we could talk about that too, but I want to talk about your herb spiral just a little bit more, because that is one of the other big points of them. Yeah, it's a handy, useful thing. But where it really shines is also as a pedagogical tool and like a community organizing tool. It gives us the opportunity to talk about so many cool things. Like, depending, we could talk about sustainable materials with it. We can talk about water and water harvesting with it. We can talk about microclimates. We can show, right plant, right place, taken to an extreme. We can talk about appropriateness. We could talk about gardens as community organizing. That's like the meta discussion, right? So yeah, it's just so many opportunities in a small space, and they look cool. You know, they have that like biophilia element to them because they're designed off of a spiral.
Yeah, for sure. It's
Not every garden needs one. You don't all need one, but they're pretty cool.
yeah. Yeah, well, I guess from now on, I'll just say, don't knock it till you try it. Because I really was like, oh, come on. And we're going to hear about the herb spiral again. And no, now I'm like, I'm a convert. I think they're amazing.
I'm going to put mine in the front right by my driveway, pretty close
Yes.
to my driveway. And then everybody who comes over can see
Yes.
it. And that's where the sun is for me.
That's the same. That's
And I
exactly
can go out
the same for us.
and there's hard paving all the way to right there. So I don't even have to wear shoes. Well, like I wear shoes in the grass, but you know, if it's wet.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis probably doesn't even wear pants on the way to his herb spiral.
I will share. Oh, this is, well, I'll try to make this an interesting story, but I love insects. And last year we had some dill and some parsley, and the swallowtails were laying eggs all over it and all that. I got a little butterfly house and brought it in just to kind of watch it, you know, go. But I'm really committed to like not intervening too much and like, you know, just keeping it in the garden, knowing that 5% of butterfly eggs make it to butterfly adult, right? Well, so the fennel is very, very popular. And I was watching these 3 different stages because I had an egg, I had like a first instar of a caterpillar and one probably like second or third. And I was going out every day. And then I went out there and the one that was bigger was in a battle with an ant. And I was like, oh my gosh, oh no, what do I do? And I'm like, I probably shouldn't do anything, but I like moved the ant off of it. And then I just watched. And the caterpillar, to see if the caterpillar was already, you know, killed or damaged or something. And it was. And the ant amazingly found its way back to the caterpillar just because of scent and whatnot, right? It found it again. I was like, okay, my job is just to watch this because there's something here for me to learn. And so I did watch the ant struggle to get this caterpillar off of the fennel plant because it was with all its legs attached to it, right? And it just went like leg by leg, biting this thing to remove it. And it finally was successful. It pulled it off. I was sad for the caterpillar and the butterfly that won't be because of it. But I also had this other thing happen where I was like, what about the baby ants? Like I'm feeling all maternal about this caterpillar and this butterfly, like I'm some mama tender or something. And I'm like, ants have babies too, and they have to eat too. So, and then I watched the ant carried the, you know, dragged the body, and the physics of how it did it going up the brick wall and over and all that were just like so amazing. Every time that it was walking backwards up the bricks, the body of the caterpillar would be hanging down. But then when it was walking, it was like walking with it in front of it. But it just knew like when I go this vertical, boom, the weight has to be below me. It was just really interesting. And then the distance that it traveled, I was like, wow, dude, like I walk 3 miles a day in the morning, but like you're dragging that thing like the equivalent of, you know, like 10 miles, like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And I got some of that on video. So it's fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. And nature is, you know, I guess it teaches us a true right view of life. You know, life is precious and nature is beautiful. And yeah, I had a similar experience once. I got into my car and there was a grasshopper on the windshield, a big one. And, you know, you usually don't get to see grasshoppers still from the bottom. And so I was looking at it and it just, you know, it had such beautiful coloring to it. It had just like this intricate pattern of different shades of green to it. And I was looking at it was a grasshopper with just this awe, these beautiful colors of nature. And right at that second, while I had my face up next to this beautiful grasshopper, a wasp landed on it and started tearing out its guts right in front of my face.
Yep.
And and that's what we actually try to attract the wasps to the garden because they take care of garden pests like that, and it also connects you to the idea that you never know when the great wasp is coming for us. Life is precious and short, and it's beautiful and it's intense, and so gardening is definitely a direct interaction and observation with a lot of truths of life. So I appreciate stories like that.
Life is that same thing. It's not just gardening, it's everything of life. We have protected ourselves and insulated ourselves from a lot of stuff. One time I was at the seafront in England, eating a sandwich, minding my own business, right? And here comes a seagull. Right next to my face. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. It's not just gardening. Nature is always ready to intrude on our little bubbles.
It is true.
Scary nature. Oh, Dennis, are you wearing pants?
Yeah. That's true. I wear a belt because of my gardening tools. It is very handy. Pockets are pretty handy. You kind of wonder why all these years we have managed to evolve pockets. Wouldn't it be a handy evolutionary? Marsupials have.
Then we wouldn't need
Why don't we
pants.
That's right. Then we wouldn't need pants. All right, just looking in on here things people have to say. Melanie, did you say you had like a question too, or
I did.
if you want to chat about something, get feedback.
Yeah, super excited that we got some Jerusalem artichoke tubers. And yeah. And then we were reading about, let's see, it's in, I have it right here, Eric, somebody's book, that like two guys who took like 1/4 of an acre, that book.
Yeah. Paradise Lot, probably by Eric Cohen's.
Yep, exactly. That's the book. So he talks about Three Sisters perennial style with the Jerusalem artichoke, the Chinese artichoke, and the American groundnut. And I just was wondering if you had experience with that. I had, we're kind of discussing it, and we haven't read the part in the book yet where he gets into maybe some of the problems around it. But my thought was, it's 3 tubers. So what's that about? Like, that's a lot of ground space that they're all trying to grow in the same, way. I did appreciate the chapter in your book about the invasiveness or lack thereof about Jerusalem artichoke, because my gosh, just go online and you'll get scared about growing them because it sounds like you'll never get rid of them, which also, in my opinion, not a bad thing. I do like them a lot. Yeah, so just, the idea being that the Jerusalem artichoke is the 10-foot tall, the spike, the stake, right? And that is it the groundnut that's the vine? Or the
groundnut's a vine. Yep.
The groundnut's the vine that can also grow to 10 feet tall. And then the Chinese artichoke is the tuber, and then the mint family, but kind of just hangs out about up to like a foot and a half tall.
Yeah, and it's an amazing rapid ground cover too. So it behaves like a mint. I have that in my book too. I think I call it Crohn's in the book, so I name for it. And I haven't grown that exact polyculture, but all of my plantings of Jerusalem artichoke for like 15 years have groundnuts, and they work really well together. And one of the reasons why is because one of the first bunches of Jerusalem artichoke I had was harvested from the wild. At the time, it was pretty hard to get seeds from them. I found a stand in the wild, and it is extremely common in Indiana, Michigan, Illinois.
Uh-oh, frozen.
Oh, we lost you.
He'll be back.
He's frozen.
We're hoagie lists.
Oh God, I never thought about that, about, we're the hoagies. That's
Oh,
It must be an age thing. At least from my point of view, it's an age thing. You have Hemingway, Holmgren, Hogue, and then Hamilton as an example of what not to do most of the time.
okay, you were saying.
uh-oh.
Okay, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't know when I got cut off. I think it was giving you a list of states.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, all those places around here, those are the main places I've done a lot of foraging. And it's really common to find those two things growing together. Like one of the most common situations I see Jerusalem artichokes growing in, I think I mentioned this in the book, I may have, or someplace else, is Jerusalem artichokes with ground nuts growing with in and around little thickets with elderberries and cane fruit like blackberries and black raspberries or both. Like that is super common. And on a couple of occasions, they've also there or nearby had hog nut or ground peanut, earth peanut, it's all called. So it's funny, you would think, well, there's a ton of tubers in that. Somehow the ground nuts don't seem to mind finding little nooks and crannies buried in there. The only problem with it is, as you're pulling out those Jerusalem artichokes, whoa, I have a big box here for sheep mulching. It just fell on the dog. The wind blew it over. She got away. No, she's looking at me suspiciously like I did it, but
You did do it.
no, I did put it there. It's true. So those things I haven't grown the Chinese artichoke or crones with them. I sure love that plant, so maybe I'll try it sometime.
And thank you, Noah, for the article about Jerusalem artichokes in the comments.
Yeah.
That's good. I will read that soon. I am trying to find myself some Jerusalem artichokes, just from a lucky source. So.
Well, you're pretty close to me, so if fall comes around when it's time to dig them, I'm sure I'll have extra. I planted them all over here because they're so great to help start up new garden areas. If I don't want them in an area, I'll chop and drop them a few times, and that will, done that Jerusalem artichoke tractoring. All of a sudden there won't be any grass ready for a new garden.
Well,
Where are you, Sandy?
I'm in Indianapolis
Okay.
and he's in Fort Wayne, so like a couple hours away.
Yeah.
Are you going to have some?
Oh, sorry, Sandy, I just accidentally muted you. And
You muted yourself too, Mike.
oh, look at that. Okay, so anybody who wants to unmute yourself before you talk.
Are you going to have some kind of open garden day in the fall to show the locals, of which I am one?
I definitely should try to do that. Things are coming along quite nicely here. It's definitely not too early to have a tour. This garden is looking pretty kick-in for just a few months in spot. In fact, here we go.
Yeah, let's see.
With the sun shining on it. This is just the little zone 1 garden, but now it's got lots of flowering, big bunches of kale still coming in, lots of lovely herbs and perennial vegetables starting in there, a bunch of sea kale. Even tomatoes are growing pretty well. I wasn't sure I wanted to try tomatoes first season because it's right now it doesn't look like it, but it's maybe 5-6 hours of full sun, and that's it. So it's not the the most tomatoes I've ever seen, but there are tomatoes on there, and we've harvested about a dozen off it. It's nice to have tomatoes just like right out there in that zone one garden. Of course, there's overhead view of part of the herb spiral. So got that checked off the list. And over there in the background, some more garden. Sometime I'll take you around and take you for a look. But I definitely think I'd like to start having people over and start having people see it, because that's how we grow a movement. And the thing is the first people who came to visit like Lily House too probably were not that impressed. But I think it was amazing for those people to see it when it was not impressive, and then to come back just 3 years later and it be like, feeling like a mature food forest already. So, that's good. It's good. Like Bill Molson said, let your sites demonstrate their progress. Don't feel like it has to be, done and this beautiful paradise before you start showing people.
Well, I think when people can see a process, they can imagine themselves living in that process. Where when they see something that's magnificent and done, there's no way they can imagine themselves accomplishing something like that. That's me.
Oh, 100%. I think that's true for everybody.
I've always thought it would be nice to have some permaculture books that had just average gardens, average succession, average successes, if that makes any sense. I think it's wonderful that we have some gifted people who are putting out information, but some of it might be intimidating when you see, for example, whatever the perfect permaculture garden is. If you see that and you're intimidated, you're like, I could never do that. I could never get there. Maybe we should show the C- gardens as well.
And that's the truth. We don't need a bunch of perfect gardens, or we don't even need a small number of perfect gardens. We need a whole bunch of C's. You know what? The world runs off C students, right? We need the world to run off C gardens.
I actually really love that idea.
To do all the work.
If we only sought and accepted work from the top 10% of all physicians on the planet, there would be a lot of us in a lot more pain now, wouldn't there?
I really love this idea. Like, I want to see the permaculture garden of a family where it's like both parents or whatever number of parents are working full time, and they have 3 or 4 kids, toddlers through junior high, and like the real life examples of people giving it their best go and fitting it around the life that they're living.
You can probably find some on YouTube.
Yeah, and to me, I didn't have kids when I was making my garden, but to me, I was looking at a bunch of people who were doing it with a bunch of volunteer labor and big budgets, and I was like, well, I don't have volunteers, I don't have big budgets. So when you look at pictures of my gardens, it's usually just me, and often I was doing it when I had a full-time job. So it's it really is, it is possible. They're out there. I bet there are other people doing a great job of it on YouTube too. So I agree. I love that. And that's a great, it's you, right? So do it. I always tell people, keep a blog, do a small blog, do something like that. Take lots of pictures, before pictures. It doesn't have to be perfect. That I think that when I look back at just my the Lily House blog, it got a lot better. When I read the first posts and everything, they're really kind of embarrassing, but they're great because of that. Because it was just I'm a knowledgeable guy, and I've been in farming and stuff for a long time. But as far as the permaculture stuff goes, it was my first real site. I was just I was figuring it out. You can do it. Everybody can do it.
How long were you on that site?
About 10 years.
Oh,
so when you see the final pictures, but the picture that I show probably the most often, I have 2 pictures that I show the most often of transformations. One was taken at 5 years and one was taken at 3 years. So even by year 3, the main garden had been installed. By year 5, it looked a lot like this. It was practically the same garden in year 5 as it was in year 7 and 8. I'm told, I haven't been back there that much this season or anything, but my sister has been there a lot and been working there. And she said that the main, there's no it's basically all turned into a perennial system. There hasn't been, as from my understanding from her, yeah, the annual part, the intensive annual part has not been replanted and maintained. But she said, like, even that, it's all just the perennials were in it have spread. So now it's just perennial beds instead of mixed annual beds. As you said, the other guilds are just like exactly the same as as before. You know, and people are still using it and harvesting it and enjoying the beauty and all that. So it's still, you know, it really has gotten to that place where it's like a very, very low input garden that's just keeping on.
That's great.
I have noticed the weeks that I don't have time, if there's a certain amount of time that I can't get to the garden, nature fills in for me. In fact, it does some pretty doggone good work. When I'm out of the garden, the birds are back in there. They're doing their thing. They're fertilizing, they're eating, they're spreading seeds. Other smaller predators are coming in and cleaning up stuff. So there's a whole lot of work going on when I leave. And sometimes I need to leave, frankly, to get the garden balanced. That's kind of the way I look at it. But I also don't have one of those Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive. That's not where I live. I live in a rural environment where it's. I like to say I use natives and those things that have naturalized as much as possible, which is a great excuse for laziness half the time. But that's what I've done, and then I've sown in some nice food and nut trees that I want and that benefit me. So if I'm not in the garden for a week, it's doing just fine. And frankly, some of the time I think it's actually doing better, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, it needs it, right? If you work too much in the garden, you work into the garden.
Yeah.
If you're working all the time to maintain it, then it needs your work to maintain it.
Yeah.
And it goes up. Yep. If you want a garden in balance, you got to back off.
And every place is different. I try to remind people. I've got a friend of mine now who, and this is not a business contact, so there's no money involved. We're buddies. And he's like, man, I want to do some of the stuff. And I said, bro, you got 7 acres. You got a nice slope. You got water here. You got some field here. You could do a bunch of things here. The first thing you need to figure out is what you and your family want to do, what you want to do with the people who frequent the land that you steward. And he understands that concept. Said, you all need to get together and decide what you all want to do. What works for you? Until you do that, I really can't help you. You can ask me questions all you want, but I really can't help you till you tell me what it is exactly that you want, what you expect, short-term, long-term, etc. And then we'll go from there. So I'm waiting on him. Maybe he's trying to figure it out.
Hey, there you go. Wisdom from Dennis Hamilton right there. We always say the first step, right? The first step is know your goals. Get real clear on that. Because how are you going to get any place worth going if you don't know where you want to be?
That's right. That's right. I don't know where I'm going on vacation. I'm just going to get in the car, drive, and see what happens. That's a recipe for disaster, or at least disappointment, right?
I have actually done that, and I ended up sleeping in the car.
Oh,
Hey, that was a figurative thing. That was a figurative thing, Mike, not a literal thing.
those trips are memorable, but not always for a good reason.
Yeah. Well, I actually thought, well, I'm going to go on a trip like this. I'm just going to get in the car and go. And when I get someplace cool, I'm going to find like a hotel or something. It got to be like, it got to be kind of late at night, and I was driving up north of Michigan, and I just find any place to stay anymore, So I was just like, ended up sleeping in the car. Yeah, that's not really that bad, but
We've got some people who want to talk.
oh yeah, who? Chime in, please.
I don't know what this person, it says James BACS. I'm sorry, I don't know who that is.
Oh, he's insane. Lock him up. Lock him up. He's nuts.
I'll lock him up with you, Dennis.
How I look. That's how I look when I first wake up. So, yeah, we just mentioned about doing it around a busy life with kids and work and all this stuff. And, it just made me think of some clients who are on the street next to where I used to live, which is where I did the tour in Montreal. And I mean, specifically them, because they wanted to really be involved, especially the mother. And like people in the city is, I mean, it's true everywhere, but in the heart of a city, especially where there's like there's so little land, there's just a disconnect in general. It's the idea that you work nonstop, and then when you actually have some time, you leave the city and you go away to nature, which is this abstract idea of something that's like away from a city. Like the stuff that's close by isn't kind of good enough, right? Which is interesting, because if we actually focused on it more, it would be better. And there's some people who don't have the ability to actually leave the city and see nature. Okay, so what they see nearby, which is literally grass and trees, any greenery will do, especially in cold climates, right? Which of course it's colder here than being from southeastern Michigan, but not by much. It's really just that the season is much longer. But it made me think that the thing that comes up over and over again, which is, I see how they, unless it's a do-it-yourselfer, which is pretty much like a no-touch system, and when they feel like it or have time, then they do their thing and they get excited each year to plant some flowers or something like this, maybe some food, hopefully, which is, if I start from a place of we're growing completely useful, everything useful, food, tea, or medicine, and then ends up with, not perfect 100%, but because they always end up buying some random stuff that doesn't make sense at all. And I just let it go because it looks cool or whatever. And it's just not gonna help the situation. But the point is, I was trying to make when I was thinking about all this is what was mentioned is, yeah, being super busy. And I get it, because that's what it is. If you have even one kid, I mean, regular life is enough for anyone, but add one kid or even two. Oh my God, they have two boys, and it's an impossibility. The idea of even getting to that, having the energy to do that, with the amount of hours that they work, and her husband as well, the amount of work they do. So the thing to say is like, and the struggle that I find is a big part of the importance of all the stuff that we're talking about here is the simple idea of having another person decide outside of a community garden. The idea of another person actually helping is a huge, huge relief. And it's also like kind of a linchpin into like the whole movement, which is like that it's the thing we do together. We don't have to get the whole neighborhood, just like one other person. The idea that another person, especially in a densely populated area, would be able to have the trust to, and that when you show up and see that something was done, you feel a great swell of relief, that the stuff is actually used. And so to me, it's like, I start to see this land, the idea that people travel from a distance, okay, who have less money to serve people who have more money at a central location, and they're actually paying more to live versus someone who has money. It makes sense that the person, wherever you work, you should basically live as close as you can to that and be able to sustain yourself in a real way. Like to be able to, I think I see now why I was placed here, to see the madness again, as what I saw in Flint, of like the madness of people who have less, like they're being wrung out. You know what I mean? Like like wet cloth into the pockets of people who have so much money. It's insane, which we all know. And that's why I mentioned this surf thing, this urban surf. Like when I see Mike's grids, I'm like, oh my God, and the amount of food that he produces in such a short amount of time. And thank you, Mike, for like sharing all this stuff, like all your years of experience. And it's really important for me to hear like all these stories. That's why I came here today, to hear these other people are doing it. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this, because man, after years of doing it, I'm like, so I need to take and do that clown thing a little more I'm like, why am I doing this again? Because as many times in my head as I try to think like, screw this whole thing, I'm going full Matrix. It's like, it's never going to happen. I don't have the heart for it. I'd rather just do this and die trying. So that's my Sunday sermon there.
Yeah, that was great. And you touched on so many really great things there. And listen to the conversation we've been having right here, and about doing this in real life. There's never going to be a time in our capitalist society where conditions are just perfect for you to relax and build your garden and just create your permaculture paradise. You have to be really compassionate. We have to be really compassionate with ourselves and just do what we can and do it in a way that we're always giving ourselves more free time, not less. You know, this is one of the things a lot of people will start with, like a big annual garden. They're giving themselves, annual gardens take a lot of work. So they're giving themselves a job to do outside of all the other hard jobs they have to do in life, right? And then, you know, and then people feel guilty when the garden fails. I used to feel like part of my job was like, as garden father confessor, you know, people would come to me and be like, Father, I have sinned. I haven't watered the garden in 3 weeks. All of my tomatoes are dead and the lettuces are overrun with weeds. And you know, I tell them to say some Hail Marys or whatever. And you know, so it's just like, people feel guilty about it. What we're really talking about is exactly like EJ just said, perennial systems first. Set up things that are going to make life easier. Like Dennis was saying, figure out ways, you know, think about ways to not do work. And, you know, and it's all this kind of stuff that makes it, that makes it work out a lot better. Oh, and by the way, that reminds me, you know, one of those systems is our water system, right? Because if we get the water set up, it can stop, it can give us a lot of benefits. We now don't have to spend time watering the garden anymore. And it can prevent a lot of problems too. Drainage issues, dryness issues, like we were talking earlier on. And, you know, I like to say that Elvis actually had all this figured out. If you don't get the water thing right, then you're going to have problems. What Elvis would say, right?
And so we got a little bit of Elvis for you people. There's a leak in this old building. Yeah, there's a leak in this old building. Yeah, there's a leak in this old building. We're gonna move to a better home. Yeah, there's a crack across the ceiling. Yeah, there's a crack across the ceiling. Yeah, there's a crack across the ceiling. We're gonna move to a better home. There's a hole in the wall where the rain pours in, a hole in the floor where it comes right out again. 'Cause there's a leak in this old building. Yeah, there's a leak in this old building. Yeah, there's a leak in this old building. We're gonna move to a better home. There's no pain in this old window. Yeah, there's no pain in this old window. Yeah, there's no pain in this old window. We're gonna move to a better home. Pulling down the curtains is no use at all. The children in the neighborhood can't see right through the wall. 'Cause there's a leak in this old building. Yeah, there's a leak in this old building. Yeah, there's a leak in this old building. We're gonna move to a better, move to a better, move to a better home.
Yeah.
Better than hole in the bucket.
You know,
Yeah.
I feel like Elvis had a lot of things figured out. The people just listen to the king.
So it looks like Noah's got something to say.
Oh yeah, Noah, please.
Noah.
All right, there's a story about a famous permaculture teacher named Robert Hart, who wrote the first book about forest gardening. Dave Jackie wrote a whole chapter called The Story of Robert in a very difficult book called Edible Forest Gardens. And he said, Robert Hart said, I really don't know much about plants. He never spoke the word design during our visit. It showed in his gardens. And furthermore, we spent more time with him. Robert had some physical problems, so I was doing Reiki work on him. And I was working on him, and he stopped to do an adjustment, and Robert Hart made a gurgling sound. He said, Robert Hart started his forest garden, dug the holes, planted the trees with his intestines sloshing in and out of his stomach cavity. And as an aside, furthermore, Robert Hart was taking care of his brother who was disabled of some kind, couldn't take care of himself. And he said he realized a man who knew absolutely nothing about permaculture, who was an idealist, created one of the first forest gardens in the Western world. He spawned a movement and became world famous from his crazy 40-foot by 80-foot plot of ground, an idea that may be almost foolproof. Everything in his garden, he made every mistake in the book, and it still worked anyway. So even a crazy old man like Robert Hart or Noah Madlin can create a garden without knowing anything. And my best garden I ever had was when I stepped away and let the plants do their thing, and nature started creating abundance like crazy. When you let nature do its thing, even if things are overplanted or not in the right design, nature will do amazing things for you.
Wow, that's amazing. That's so cool. You have so much lore about permaculture, Noah. And that's such a good point, because when I read Edible Forest Gardens were the case studies, I love to mention that, the fact that I felt bad for Robert Hart because they tore it to pieces. They're like, this is a terrible forest garden, like great idea, bad execution. But when you look at videos of him talking about it, he clearly loved it, and he got all kinds of food from it. And look, it's Robert Hart, the first forest garden that we know of. I mean, that inspired a lot of us in the modern world today, so that's a very good point. Like, it can be sloppy and it's still awesome.
Nature wants us to succeed. It's funny. I'm a big forager, and a lot of the things that I've tried to do are document wild, naturally occurring, like literal no-work forest gardens out there all over the place. And practically every place I've gone, there are wild thickets with a high percentage of food-producing plants, and like they literally weren't even planted by a crazy old man. They were literally planted by like birds, and the birds did a pretty awesome job making these food forests. Over time, the plants will evolve a better spacing, at least an optimized sort of spacing. They're going to compete with each other, and you're going to end up with a system that's producing lots of biomass. In a lot of cases, they'll produce a lot of food too. Now, if we want to make it just like a little bit better, you be mindful about what species you're picking, right? You pick the better species. You pick species that are going to produce well for you in your region, things that are going to produce clean fruit without a bunch of bugs in them. If you're in a bug area, stuff like that, we can make it better. But, if birds and Robert Hart can do it, I don't mean that about Robert Hart. He was a super huge inspiration to everybody. And he's an amazing poet and writer too. And his book is amazing as well too. But yeah, I mean, birds do it, bees do it. Oh wait, what are we talking about?
I have yet to see a square. I was going to say, I have yet to see a square watershed, yet we humans come in and we want to make everything into a checkerboard. We want squares here, rectangles here. Maybe we want to do Tetris where we fit all these things. No, just go with the watershed. The watershed will tell you what to do. I think that's the way to look at it.
Absolutely. Hey, I have, oh, no, is this going to be it? Here, let's see if I got something here. Okay, yeah, I want to look at this one more time real quick with y'all, because I figured we've been talking this month about water and preserving water and stewarding water and designs and stuff like that. But I really think this discussion we've been having is a lot more about what we can learn from water, because water has a sort of innate wisdom to it. And water, is something that we can learn from in a way. So I actually pulled out a few quotes here from the Tao Te Ching, and I think these are great. This is from the Tao Te Ching, and this book is kind of, and the Chuangzi are kind of some of the first permaculture books, in my opinion. And I think this is a great quote. Water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will overcome what is rigid and hard. This is another paradox. What is soft is strong. And I'm going to read the next one too. The best people are like water, which benefits all things and does not compete with them. It stays in lowly places that others reject. This is why it is so similar to the way. And I think kind of some of the discussions we're having are about being a little bit more like water, finding the easy way to soak into the landscape, not trying to fight so hard against nature, and instead following the low path, sink into go with what's easy in the landscape. Find the way to make it easy, like water, instead of trying to find a way to garden and fight all the time with things. Well, I think those are some great quotes. Let's leave a little space in case anybody wants to drop in their own Taoist nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, I think if we get in the way of water's home, I think in light of what's happening in Kentucky right now, we can see that if we don't properly provide for water's home, or if we interfere with water's natural home, we're going to have problems. And that's what we've done, civilization after civilization after civilization. Based on what I've read and researched, we have abused water in a sense, and then water comes back to kill us. That is an irony. That's an irony for sure.
Yeah, and maybe there's some hope in that too, in that if we stop getting in water's way and abusing water and trying to treat water as a problem and let water go where it wants to go, be in the soil, be in the ecosystems, then it itself can regenerate and heal a lot of the problems we're talking about, in combination with the birds and the bees and everything we were talking about earlier. And maybe if we as a movement are kind of more like water in that way too, then maybe our message of regeneration will spread. I like this one too. Be careful. This says, it's a Lao Tzu quote. I think it's maybe like a transliteration. I've never seen this at any place, so this might be an interesting translation or transliteration, but I liked it, so I included it. Be careful what you will water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dreams. Water them with optimism and solutions, and you will cultivate success. Always be on the lookout for ways to turn a problem into an opportunity. Always be on the lookout for ways to nurture your dream. This reminds me that water too is always looking for opportunities, right? Wherever there's a crack in the pavement, wherever there's a crack in the ceiling, the water is going to rush right in, and it's going to run right out the hole in the floor again, as Elvis said. And because it's looking for those opportunities naturally. And a last one here, maybe not last one. Have patience, wait until the mud settles and the water is clear. Remain unmoving until right action arises by itself. It's another quote I think about. Waiting for opportunities, looking for those opportunities, and going where the opportunities are at.
Yeah, those are awesome. Yeah, water is, if y'all don't, Tao Te Ching is, I used to listen to it when I brush my teeth in the morning, the audiobook. It's a really good audiobook. And water, I was just Googling it while Mike was talking. And, water is probably like the number one thing that talks about. It's like uses water as a huge analogy. So if we're talking about water, man, how cool is that? You know, to that is probably my favorite book of all time. It really is an awesome book. It's so unlike any other book in its league, like let's say religious, it seems to be completely secular. You know, it's just like got good common sense, but you know, it personifies that wise old sage at the top of the mountain, you know, where the water hits when the rain comes and it falls down and forms the rivers, right?
Yeah, EJ, I think we got that in common too. I think it's probably my favorite book too.
You know, I see a lot of integral thought in this. All that stuff, the first quote I think that you showed us, there was something in there that I thought, wow, that, yes, another paradox, what is strong is soft, or what is soft is strong. Yielding will overcome what is rigid. Tell me that is not integral thinking.
It really is when we talk.
It really is.
And think about that too. If we come to a problem or a discussion with this idea of being rigid, then we won't move, but we're so much less likely to move the other person. Because if we're standing in our own spot, rigid and strong, then we'll never really understand or connect with what their problem is and their perspective is. If we can allow ourselves to move and yield like water and experience and move with them and experience what their perspective is and what their truth is, only then can we really try to find solutions that will transcend our two rigid stances together. And it's funny, it's usually the one who moves first. It's the one who yields and looks for those opportunities to find commonalities who will be the one who, you know, it's even pointless to talk about winning such a discussion. And such a solution, both people win, right? So by following that water way, you know, that's how we often win. And yeah, that's absolutely integral thinking, isn't it?
Very much so. And it's interesting because he's lived so long ago.
Yeah, it's you know, ancient, that we tend to think, we tend to make one or two mistakes, right? We tend to think either ancient people were just like naturally wise and had like magic or something. You know what? Those mofos were just as confused and messed up as us for the most part. They didn't have TV and computers to make them more confused, but you know, they were just muddling through too. But at the same time, they had the same problems that we had. They had the same challenges, and they came up with a lot of great solutions as well. And the best ones have been with us for thousands of years because they've meant a lot to a lot of people for thousands. They've been the right solution for thousands of years. People have been testing them. It's basically like science, right? It's been tested in people's lives for thousands of years. You know, the other option is that we think that everybody who lived back then were all idiots. Clearly, you know, the truth is they were just like us. But if the wisdom has stood the test of time, there's probably a reason for it. And I like this one too. The supreme good is like water, which nourishes all things without trying to. That kind of reminds me a lot about what we were talking about there with Dennis too. Stepping back from the garden without trying to nourish or nurture the garden. It heals itself by giving it space. He's giving it what it needs. It is content with the low places that people disdain. Thus it is like the Tao. In dwelling, live close to the ground. In thinking, keep to the simple. In conflict, be fair and generous. In governing, don't try to control. I could say in gardening, also don't try to control. In work, do what you enjoy. In family life, be completely present. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you. You know, there's a translation of that line that is, he or she who does not compete, no one can compete with them.
Right on. Yeah, it's such good stuff. You know, like when the rain falls, I remember we were in Iowa. My friends were walking through at Maharishi, you know, when I was getting into all that stuff, and just the idea that when the rain falls, it forms a river, like where we walk through the forest usually, and there's all these like tributaries, but it becomes like a legit lake with like rivers and all this stuff. And it's so rare to actually see it that way because it doesn't necessarily rain enough all the time for that to happen, but it does happen. And just the idea that like, well, because the rain becomes a river and conquers the land like temporarily, and then the land conquers the rain when it dries up. No, it's like that's just things we make up in our head, you know. So it's just so refreshing to be able to wipe all that crap away. That's why I love that book, because it just I don't know, if there's one book that's gonna like make be there for me forever, it's that book. You know what I mean? It's just it's so beautiful. Such a beautiful, so simple. One of my favorites is govern a large country like you would fry a small fish. Too much poking ruins it. One of my favorites.
You know, it's funny. You can use that book in almost any part of your life. You can use it like it's a gardening manual. I like it that too, that like you were saying, it's not really giving people religious ideas or trying to indoctrinate people. It's a very and I hope too, that's kind of what we're doing here with First Church Permaculture. Just thought I'd throw this in here, that for people maybe listening to this for the first time, we're having this discussion now. In each one of these, we try to have something cultural. We try to have some fun. We try to talk about some things that will actually help you grow a better garden and be practical, just like the Tao Te Ching is very practical. And we try to bring something that will help also feed the soul as well, like this discussion. So this is what we're trying to do here with this First Church of Permaculture thing. And I've had a great time today chatting with you all about these things. I see that Amy has joined us too. I want to keep this one, or try to keep this one under this amount of time. So we're about out of time today. But Amy, we could hang out. If anybody who wants to hang out after we're done here, Amy had a question and thought we might help her brainstorm on her question about water. So if you feel like hanging out for another 5 or 6 minutes and brainstorming, that would be fun. And at this point, I'm going to sing for you the oldest song. This is the oldest song that we know that was written down by humans anywhere. It's the oldest written song. I'm sure there are older songs in some cultures, but this is the oldest song that we actually have the music and the words to. It's Euripides' epitaph, and it just goes, as long as you live in love, let nothing trouble you. Life is only too short, and time takes its toll. All right. Thanks for joining the First Church of Permaculture, people. And thanks for everyone who was part of the discussion. Have a wonderful.
Old songs rule.
All right. So I'll probably end the video there. But Amy, if you'd like to join us and tell us about your situation, anybody who wants to stay and brainstorm forward.
Thank you. Great church meeting. Best church. My partner was sitting and he said, "That's not like any church I ever attended."
It's better.
Yeah.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I was late to the meeting because I was watering at the food bank garden that I'm on the board of. So, where we have some drip irrigation and hand water a lot of things because we're on a municipal lot, and that's about all we can do. It just bakes, and what is wonderful about it is it was reclaimed from all of the debris that they dumped there when they built the housing area around it, and it's been providing food for people who need it for 25 years. So um, but my own thing here is we bought a 1/4 acre downtown in Monroe, Washington. And I have drip irrigation because it was the only way I could think of. I wasn't here all the time, and I could put it on timers. And now that we are here all the time, I'm still using it because it seems to be the most user-friendly when you have municipal water and a flat land. We do have rain barrels, and we're putting in more. But on the whole, I filter the water, but any suggestions would be really great. I mean, I'm the reason why I'm watering so much is right now we're close to 100 degrees for this past week. And I have a lot of berries, and I've put in a lot of dwarf fruit trees, and they're fairly new plantings, and I just don't want to lose them. So I think as everything gets more established, they'll require a lot less. We're composting and mulching and doing everything we can to retain the water. But any additional help would be gratefully accepted.
Yeah, and I'd like to start just by saying, using irrigation or drip irrigation isn't necessarily a problem at all. We can't cover the world with it. We don't have, it's a lot of plastic, and we don't have, but in your case, on a small space where you're trying to create food security for yourself and create a healthy ecosystem around yourself, I don't necessarily see it as a problem at all. Ethically, and I think you're in the Pacific Northwest. You're in an area probably that has a Mediterranean climate, but overall, you probably have a lot of water. And I think you're in an area that's considered pretty water secure. Using fossil water in your area, to me, it's not a huge ethical issue. It's not. So I don't want to make it sound like that's necessarily a bad solution or anything like that. There are a lot of areas where they have very depleted aquifers, a lot of places where it's dry. They can only farm or garden because of the use of the aquifer in a conventional way. And so, so in those cases in particular, the irrigation becomes a thing that further burdens the aquifer. So it's a complicated issue. I hope that nothing that you've seen in the group has made you feel super guilty or anything about using irrigation. But no. At the same time, it's always good if we can try to reduce it some. So I'm hoping we can give you some ideas about reducing it some.
The thing is, I did invest in the irrigation. Actually, my daughter is a commercial landscape gardener, and she helped me with getting the equipment originally to get everything into drip irrigation. But I try not to buy any more plastics, and I do try to cover it so that it's not, it's not heated by the sun and off gassing and causing other problems. Otherwise, everything here is no pesticides, no anything, nothing but natural fertilizers and compost. And but yeah, I want to get away from having to water so much in the heat of the summer. We have tons of water. We had a very long spring, a very cold spring this year, and we were getting inches of water every week all winter. So yeah, and everything here is is mountain fed, but yeah, I still feel guilty using it.
Yeah. It sounds to me like you're already doing a lot of things that are really great. And when it comes to those plastics in the landscape and things like that, it's like, in my opinion, we're so surrounded by plastics at this point that that we can't try. I mean, we can try, but realistically, it's really difficult to not have like any contact or any contamination with it. Our goal then should, but understanding too that those plastics do pretty much always, to be honest, come with some risk from microplastics and phthalates. And just for everyone who's listening, and those can have serious health effects. They can have serious effects on the garden too. And for people who are listening, in case I decide to keep this in the recording on YouTube, what Amy is doing sounds really good to me. Sounds about right. It is exposure to the environment and agitation, like hoses that get tossed around a lot out in the sun, exposed to the elements. They will tend to break down off gas, secrete more phthalates and more microplastics than a situation where they're covered over, hopefully buried like subsurface irrigation, or covered with mulch at least. So it sounds to me like you're limiting your use, you're limiting your exposure in other ways, and you're limiting how much those are probably off gassing. It sounds to me like you're doing a lot of things that are already really right with that. And also, you're thinking long term, knowing that improving your soil is going to improve the watering situation, and using lots of mulch is going to improve it a lot. I don't know if you're already a convert to nurse logs, but we're, nurse log central around here. There's a lot of great research showing that nurse logs next to a garden, which is basically just using, here's a picture, having logs next to the garden are amazing water storage and water harvesting features. In this image, you can see a lot of them are put on contour like swales, so they'll help soak in the water and make sure any water that's falling on your site is getting into the soil well. So definitely, if there's any slopes, any beds like that, having these nurse logs on contour will help make sure the water infiltrates into the soil. And then the research also shows they form symbiotic relationships with fungi and other organisms that help store the water in the wood, and it shades the soil and really helps keep water under those too. So, this is one other thing I could recommend, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of things right. So I just want to throw those things out too. Before I say, anyone else have suggestions or thoughts?
Are we alone?
Oh.
Very deep.
We're here.
Dog life.
I'm just in agreement. So,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, I put some pieces of firewood by some raspberries yesterday because it's kind of dry there, and I thought I'd just make me some little baby nurse logs.
Okay, I haven't used that. I will look that up better. I do have my raised beds because this was commercially used for, the property had a bow house on it and was commercially used for growing hanging baskets. I didn't trust the soil when we moved here, so I built raised beds out of natural wood. And they're holding up quite well. I didn't use any treated woods, but they're about a foot tall, and I raise all my vegetables in that. I will consider the raspberries and things, getting them some nurse logs. That's a very good idea.
And it's low tech. It's good.
I like low tech. I'm 71.
I'm not far behind.
And Noah mentions deep mulch beds with 6 to 12 inches of safe mulch begun in the late fall so they can break down over the winter. I love that too, you know, topping up those raised beds of yours with nice deep mulch. I think a lot of us permaculturists like deeper layers of mulch than a lot of other people. I mean, for me, 6 to 12 inches. Most of my gardens usually will have like, you know, 8 to 10 inches of deep mulch on them, and then also those nurse logs and stuff, and it really that really makes a big difference.
Okay, I do mulching, but I haven't done it that deeply. I will do that this winter. Although I do plan to cover crop, so.
Yeah, it can be a little bit confusing as to what you do with mulch and cover cropping. So the two are often kind of in conflict, and 100% of the time, if the choice is between those two, I would probably choose the mulch.
Okay, that makes it easier.
Yeah, you know, the mulch has just been demonstrated to have amazing impacts on soil fertility and water. In fact, the research out of Cornell has found that 4 inches of most organic mulches, in fact, this is basically just kind of basic nutrient math. Like 4 inches of oak chips, for example, will have more nutrients than an inch of compost added a year. So if every year you add 4 inches of oak leaves, and the same thing is true with like straw mulch or even grass mulch. So if every year you're adding just that much new mulch, that will provide the same fertility as an inch of compost, plus it's also the mulch. So the mulch will maintain the water, it will reduce your weeding to almost nothing, it will increase your soil fertility. Mulch is just one of the best possible things you can do in the garden. You know, the one time I really like cover crops is I do a system called slash mulch. So where I grow out the cover crops and then slash them to make mulch in place and then plant into that.
Yeah, we've done that at the food bank garden now that we're almost all older and have decided not to do any tilling. So, okay, because I have filled the beds with leaves before and then covered them with a small amount of compost to hold them in place. But
that's good. That's good.
Okay. I don't have oak leaves, but
almost any kind of leaves are going to have that same thing. I just mentioned those because because anyone who's watching this who Googles this, I'm pretty sure this page is from Cornell, and the math that they use is specifically about oak leaves, but you can see it applies to other things too. I'm pretty sure the exact page on it uses oak leaves, but if you use maple leaves, they'll be similar. And if you use 6 to 10, 12 inches of pretty much any organic mulch, it's going to have a huge positive impact on that. Yeah, I thought I'd taken them down earlier. I even mentioned it to Dennis. I lied to you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we were talking about this too. The other last thing that I would always point out is water direction. You may have missed this part, but we were talking about opportunities to get water in the landscape to where we want the garden to be. So in our whole class recently, we were talking about, like, if I were planting the garden here in this blue area, I'd want to try to find ways to get water from as much of the garden to that area as possible. So the last kind of idea I'd bring up that's really powerful one to me is, have you planned out water direction and how you might use, like, where does the water from the roof go? Where does the water from the parking areas go? Is there lawn? Where does that go? Can you get, because one of the best ways we've talked about to have a garden that's irrigation proof is, like looking at this picture. This is about, if I remember correctly, it's about an acre. It would be really difficult to make a whole big garden on an acre irrigation proof. But if we can take the water from a whole big acre and funnel it down and channel it to a small area, like 1,000 square feet or something like that, then we can often have a much bigger irrigation-free garden in that small area if we're doing that water direction. So I'm not sure if you put thought yet into directing water in the landscape to get it to the places that have the most productivity or not.
We have rain barrels that are off the back of our wood shop, which would be someone else's garage. And that's right adjoining the vegetable garden. And we've just put a shed here, and that's going to have rain barrels behind it, where the whole house water will the water will cross an arbor. This is kind of a fancy place. My husband's an architectural designer, so he's engineering pipes above the arbor to get it to the back of the shed, and we will have more water stored there. And that's all adjoining all the different beds. But this garden was designed by some pretty botanical savvy people. So there's an awful lot of ornamentals, and I'm just making it into more ferns and easy to maintain things and whatever, without losing the initial bones of it. So, and wildflowers and lavenders and things like that are all pollinator happy, and they're doing very well that way. We have a lot of critters living here now.
Sounds like a lovely garden.
It's fun. And it's nice to be retired. So thank you so much for all your input. And I will watch more and read more and stay tuned.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. And on that note,
pleasure.
Someone talking? Okay, on that note, everybody, I want to say bye again. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
Say bye again, too.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you next time. Thanks for joining, EJ. Bye, everybody.